Live and local broadcasting from the doctors Lorraine Rubis and Neil Frankel studio at WUSF in Tampa. I'm Matthew Petty. Florida is planning to execute two men in one day. That's scheduled to happen tomorrow. James Duckett and Dominic Occacioni are set to be executed Tuesday at noon and 6 p.m. respectively. Attorneys for both men claim that executing two men in the same day could cause something to go wrong for one or both of them. Now, according to court records, Duckett previously underwent chemotherapy, making his veins hard to access, and Occacioni's lawyer argues that he's 80 years old and because his health is failing, executing him would be unconstitutionally cruel. So what do you think? Do you believe someone who is old or sick should be executed even if they are guilty of committing a heinous crime, or should a judge stay their execution due to illness or old age? You can join the conversation by calling 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. Let us know what you think. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. And joining us today is John Koch. He's attended every Florida execution since Ted Bundy in 1989. John, thank you so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure, sir, and thank you for having me.
So I wonder if we could start with a brief summary of the crimes of these two men. Just kind of let us know what they did.
Well, let's see. I'm gotten through my notes. We have two murders.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So James Duckett, what was his crime?
He murdered a young woman that he allegedly picked up in his patrol car.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So
Occacioni is being executed for the 1986 murders of his ex-girlfriend's parents in Pasco County.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so these two have been on death row for some time.
Oh, years and years and years, decades. They're longtime members of the death row club, if I could use that term.
Yeah. Now, so you have covered every single, or you've witnessed every single execution since Ted Bundy in the late 80s, and tomorrow you're going to have a busy schedule. So this is kind of unusual, right? I understand it has happened before, but not, in 60 or so years.
No, it's 62 years. It was 1964 was the last time that Florida executed two men at the same day. So it has been a while.
Yeah.
It is not uncommon in the United States. It's just not done in the common. And the governor has stepped up the pace, but at least he puts 2 to 3 weeks in between each execution, with the exception of the Duckett and Occacioni executions.
So do we know why they're both happening on the same day? Is it just kind of like a scheduling issue? Like, what's going on there?
You're going to have to ask the governor that question, which is something I've been attempting to do for several years now. Last year, I did an article explaining or as best with what I could, the effect that it is having on the personnel that have to committed. But I haven't had much luck getting anybody to talk about something that is being done in our name, one, and two, there are public areas of which can be discussed by the governor or his appointed staff that I think the governor's office needs to do. I think people have a right to know how the system is being done, and there are things that I know we can talk about and should.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, and you mentioned the effect that carrying out an execution has on the jail staff and everybody's associated with it, and I suppose the witnesses too, right? I mean, it's kind of, there's a lot of intense emotions, I imagine, and even just witnessing one of these.
Yeah, there is, and I've been able to observe, quite a few as far as the victims' families, anything from pure joy to being stunned to just quiet acceptance that justice was carried out for them. Mm-hmm. The rest of the members are members of the governor's office or Department of Corrections staff or law enforcement. So it's kind of hard to judge, their faces. And we're on the last row, so all we get to do is see reflections in a plexiglass and back of the head. So,
yeah.
There's not much indication that we can get on the last row.
Yeah.
And the other thing is there have been so few of us. There's been me and the AP, and that's why I'm continuing to do it, because there are so few of us. Even now, there's only going to be 6 of us for one execution and 5 of us for another. And in the past, distant past, those back seats were filled with media representatives. Just to let you know, I'm the only broadcaster that has reported on executions since 1989.
Wow. If you're just joining us on Florida Matters Live and Local, we're talking with John Koch. He's witnessed all Florida executions since Ted Bundy in 1989. 2 people set to be put to death tomorrow in the state of Florida. What do you think about older people or sick people being executed? Should a judge stay their executions due to their age or illness? You can weigh in on the conversation by calling 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org and let us know what you think. So, John, data from the Death Penalty Information Center shows that since 1973, 30 people on Florida's death row have been exonerated for being wrongfully convicted, the highest number in the nation. So how do you kind of reconcile that pretty high error rate with the finality of what you witness on the inside of that prison?
That part of, and that's not my job. And so I don't get to touch that angle. The only time that I do get to touch it is when I have a case in my circuit. I represent the Third Judicial Circuit, which is Hamilton, Suwannee, Lafayette, Madison, Columbia, Dixie, and Taylor counties. The most recent execution that I've been able to witness that has come out of our circuit was Wainwright, the Wainwright execution. And I was present at his trial, so there's no issue there. The other one was Johnson out of Madison County. I was present at his trial. No problem there. There was the conviction. And then, of course, the one that started off my career was Ted Bundy. I was not at his trial. However, I was in Suwannee County for his appeals. And looking over the court record, talking with the state attorney that prosecuted him and the prosecuting attorneys, and being able to look at the evidence that convicted the man, there was no problem there.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, I have no idea because it's outside of my circuit.
Yeah, okay. So you're just kind of reporting on what you see and experience inside the prison there. Now, I mean, there has been a big surge in executions, though, since Ron DeSantis took office as governor. 29 people put to death in the last 19 months. I'm sort of wondering, as a reporter who covers this, how do you handle, covering executions at this pace, I guess?
Well, I'm a veteran of the United States Army, so there's things involved in being a veteran. I've been around violence all my life, and I've been a victim of violence, both sexual and physical. So I understand it. It's all about power. I also have the intellectual and spiritual knowledge that I make choices, and I can either allow these past experiences to run my life, or I can put them in perspective and understand that they don't rule my life or make my life. So what I've done is I compartmentalize it.
Yeah.
And it is a part of life. It's not a nice part of life. It's not something that, I enjoy. But it is an obligation and a duty that I have found that I've had to do because of where our country is at the moment, and how media is being treated, especially in areas, rural areas.
Right.
My people get very little.
Yeah.
So
if I could just get a call in here, if I could, John, we've got, I believe, Edward calling in from Sarasota. Edward, you're on the air. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that if a person has been convicted of a very, very serious crime, for instance, murder, that the idea that we should be and has been tried and convicted and sentenced to death, that death penalty should be carried out in a reasonable amount of time, having given the prisoner or the murderer, having given the perpetrator of the crime enough time for appeal, and to be absolutely positive that this person is guilty of the crime that they've committed and been convicted of. They should be put to death in a reasonable amount of time. I'm going to throw a number at you, 3 years. And also in that space of time, the family of the person that was murdered should have the opportunity to say to the judge, yes, we want him executed, or no, we prefer that he doesn't get executed, and take that out of the public sphere. For us to be putting people in there for 30 and 40 years and giving them a better life than people that are sitting on the streets begging for money with small children in their lap, I think is a travesty of justice.
Edward, thank you so much for your call. John, we've only got about 30 seconds here left, but that notion of people being on death row for so long, I mean, that is a huge debate, right?
Well, yeah, and then let me comment on that. Put yourself in that situation. You would want every opportunity to prove your innocence.
Sure.
So that's how I look at that. And the second thing is that I agree with the gentleman. You want the punishment to be effective. It has to be sure, swift, and consistent. Well, we're going to have to throw more money at it then. We're going to have to put more attorneys on those cases and spend more money to make sure that those appeals are done swiftly, accurately, and fairly.
Yeah.
We're not going to be perfect.
Yeah. John, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us, rejoining, in fact, the show. We talked to you a little bit ago, but really appreciate you weighing in. Florida's death penalty correspondent John Koch ahead of tomorrow's dual executions. Thank you so much for your insights. Appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. My pleasure, sir.
Coming up next, former Governor Charlie Crist running to be Mayor of St. Pete. He's going to join us in the studio. You can join the conversation. The number is 813-755-6562. If you've got questions for Governor Crist about his vision for the city of St. Pete, you can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org with your questions and comments. Stay with us.
Residents across the greater Tampa Bay region are adapting their homes to flooding.
We're actually doing tile that looks like wood. This way when it floods, we don't need to touch it. We'll still have to do it with the drywall.
I'm Jessica Mazzaros, climate reporter for WUSF. From emergency info to storm recovery, we've got you covered every hurricane season and beyond.
WUSF depends on contributions from people like you. And the family law firm of Harris, Hunt & Durr, lawyers who listen and act, protecting each client, their family, and their financial future. Experienced trial lawyers, tough negotiators, collaborative divorce resolution. Harris, Hunt & Durr, protection without destruction.
Turn your old car into powerful local journalism and programming you love on WUSF. When you donate it, we'll handle the pickup for free, and you'll get a tax deduction. Best of all, you'll fuel the news coverage and local shows that keep our community informed and connected. Call 866-WUSF-CAR or visit WUSF.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. Charlie Crist is running for mayor. He's one of 6 candidates running to lead the city of St. Petersburg. He was governor of the state of Florida. He was state attorney general, served in the U.S. House. He was a state senator and an education commissioner. You may perhaps have cast a vote for him in the past. He's been a Republican, an independent, a Democrat. Is he a perennial candidate, an evolving politician? Joining us to talk more about his campaign to lead the city of St. Pete, former Governor Charlie Crist. Welcome to Florida Matters Live and Local.
It's great to be with you, Matt. Thanks so much for having me.
Indeed. Now, we want you to weigh in as well. What questions do you have for former Governor Crist about his platform? What issues are important to you about the city of St. Petersburg? You can join the conversation by calling 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org with your questions and comments. All right, so Governor, let's start with a very simple question. Why do you want to be the mayor of St. Petersburg?
Well, a couple reasons. Number one, Matt, I love St. Pete. It's where I grew up. I've lived there since I was 3 years old. My family lives there. My father's still alive. He lives there. He just turned 94, in fact, on June 12th. So hopefully good genes. But unfortunately, I lost my mother about 6 months ago.
Sorry to hear that.
But she was 91. Thank you. I appreciate that. And my sisters live there, and it's a beautiful place. And I think we need better leadership than we currently have.
You filed papers a few months ago. So tell us about the moment you decided, I'm getting in this race.
It was a process. I first started getting calls from some friends, spring a year ago, encouraging me to consider it. And so I gave it thought and, eventually came to the conclusion that The current mayor, Mayor Welch, while I like him and think he's a nice fellow, I think we can do better in the administration and City Hall in St. Petersburg than we're getting now.
Yeah, okay, so talk about that. What do you think is lacking?
Leadership. We look like we have lost our Major League Baseball team. We can start with that. That's catastrophic in my view.
Why?
Because it's such an element and a central part of what St. Petersburg is all about. And I remember, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner about building a field out in the middle of an Iowa farm. Mm-hmm. St. Petersburg literally is the Field of Dreams come to life. I mean, we built the Tropicana field without having a team or thinking, that expansion was even possible or probable. And a lot of people put a lot of sweat equity and effort into that, myself among them, in a minor way. But it's heartbreaking to see that occur. I mean,
but do you think that how much responsibility does Mayor Welch bear for that? Because there are so many factors at play there, right?
I'm an old quarterback. I played quarterback for St. Pete High School and then 2 years at Wake Forest University in North Carolina. I was a walk-on, so don't be too impressed. But nonetheless, you have to be able to call a play, and you have to be able to execute that play. And, for whatever reason, the Rays' time in St. Petersburg looks like it's coming to an end. I hope that's not the case. Should I have the honor of winning this campaign, I certainly would. I'm a never give up kind of guy, and I would give it everything I can to convince them to stay in St. Petersburg. We have a stadium. Tampa doesn't yet. So there's that. But I just think you need to work hard every day if you're a public official and you get to be the mayor of a jewel like St. Petersburg, Florida. It's outstanding. It's a beautiful city. And we seem to be on a pause. Another problem was that Moffitt Cancer Center wanted to relocate in downtown St. Petersburg with a satellite from, they have one here in Tampa where we are today as well. That fell through the cracks, too, for whatever reason. So when you're the quarterback, you probably get a little more praise than you should when the team wins and maybe the opposite when they lose. And, things that happen on your watch are your responsibility. And, you don't stop negotiating because you feel like you're at an impasse. You got to keep trying and keep giving it the full effort. And in this case, it didn't happen from my point of view with the baseball team. Didn't happen with the Moffitt Cancer Center satellite coming to downtown St. Petersburg. We've lost Home Shopping Network. They left with about 2,000 jobs. Things just seem to be in a pause right now in St. Pete.
Let me just get a couple of calls in here if I could. We've got Michael calling in from St. Petersburg. I just want to repeat that number too, 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562 if you've got questions, comments for candidate, former Governor Charlie Crist, who's running to be mayor of St. Pete. Michael, you're on the air. What are you thinking?
Hey, this is Chef Michael. I have to say that Charlie Crist had the forethought to, people say, hey, wishy-washy, going from Republican to Democrat. He saw the forethought of seeing it on the wall way before anybody else. And now you see what kind of thing we're into right now, where it's kind of not good. So I really have to say, I really appreciate Charlie Crist, and I think he's really the best man for this job.
All right, Michael, thanks for your call. And let's go to Dan, I think. Dan.
Can I thank him, Matt?
For sure, yeah.
Chef Michael, thank you so much. I appreciate your encouragement and your kind words. A lot of people switch parties. Ronald Reagan did. Hillary Clinton did. It's not really that unusual. And, you just need to do what you feel right with in your own soul. And, I've never felt better politically than being a Florida Democrat.
You've got a lot of pushback from it, though, haven't you?
Not really.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. Some, no question about that. Some people, they take it hard or, put too much into it, I think. And it's not really, the parties aren't that important. What's really important are the people. And that's what we need to be focused on. That's what I've always focused on, whether I've been governor or a state senator or attorney general or a congressman. And it's what I'll do as mayor if I have the good fortune to win, is I'll be focused on the people of St. Petersburg and making sure we have infrastructure that is necessary if we have storms and those kind of things.
Yeah, and we can talk more about storms in a sec, but let me get another quick call in here if I could. Dan is calling in. Dan, you're on the air. What are you thinking?
Hey, Charlie, it's Dan from St. Pete. I want to expound a little bit more on the Rays deal.
Sure.
How do you see an extension going to them, and what leverage would you use to, get the right lease payment, or maybe get them to give up some of their land so we could start building some workforce housing up by the interstate or something?
Dan, that's a good question. Governor Crist, I know you've got thoughts about it. We're actually going to have to maybe pause the answer until after we go to a break, but let me just reintroduce you. We're talking to former Governor Charlie Crist. He is running to be mayor of St. Petersburg. If you've got questions for former Governor Crist, you can give us a call, 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also send us your questions and comments, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. We're going to continue our conversation with candidate Crist in just a few moments. Do stay with us on Florida Matters Live and Local. More to come in a moment.
When President Trump announced an anti-crime task force in Memphis last fall, federal and local officials never mentioned immigration enforcement as a goal. But the first few months shocked the community.
It was very evident that this was an immigration operation at its core.
Trump says he wants to replicate the Memphis task force elsewhere. I'm Elsa Chang. That's on All Things Considered from NPR News.
This afternoon at 4 on WUSF.
You tune in to WUSF for all your favorite NPR shows. And for a list of when you can hear them, visit WUSF.org. WUSF is your spot for local, on air and online.
Gulfside Healthcare Services has provided expert, compassionate care in hospice, palliative, and home health for over 35 years. Now serving Pinellas hospice patients. Call 800-561-4883 for information or visit gulfside.org.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty, continuing our conversation with former Florida Governor and U.S. Representative Charlie Crist, currently running to be mayor of St. Petersburg. He's up against incumbent Ken Welch and a bunch of other candidates as well. Today, we're offering an opportunity for listeners, that's you, to hear directly from the former governor himself about his platform, policy positions, perspectives on the challenges facing the city of St. Pete. You can weigh in. 813-755-6562 is the number. That's 813-755-6562. You can also send us an email, FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. So, Governor, before we went to break, we got a question from our listener, Dan, about how to kind of get things going in the gas plant district, workforce housing specifically. What are your thoughts there?
Well, he was asking about the Rays as well, because that's the same property.
Sure.
Well, I think, number one, if I have the good fortune to win, what I immediately would want to do is engage in conversation with the new ownership of the Rays, see what it is that they're looking for. We've got a stadium that St. Pete spent about $60 million repairing after the two storms came through in 24. And so we have a built stadium that's been improved from what it was back in 2024, obviously. Tampa does not have a stadium yet.
They seem pretty adamant they want to go to Tampa, though, right?
It seems that way, yes. I think the signals certainly indicate that. But, it's not over till it's over. And you never give up. And it's, I think, vitally important to do everything we can to try to keep the team in St. Petersburg. It means a lot to me. My first job out of law school, as a matter of fact, I worked for professional baseball. I was general counsel to the minor league division of the baseball commissioner's office, which is based in St. Pete. I worked under Peter Uberoth and Bowie Kuhn, who were commissioners during that tenure. So it's in my DNA, and I would try very, very hard to open up the negotiating and have an opportunity to at least have a shot at keeping them in St. Pete.
Do you think, I mean, if the contract's signed by January, like how much time would you have to turn things around? It seems like it might be a bit quixotic to sort of try and, turn that ship around if they've already got things in hand, like papers in hand.
Well, they don't. They have MOUs, memorandums of understanding, which are not binding contracts. I think we all know that. I mean, I guess it shows some level of good faith, but there isn't a stadium for them to play in, really, unless they just, play it at the spring training site for the Yankees, Steinbrenner Field, which is a fine field, but it's not what you want for a Major League Baseball team. And, I think that the fact that we have a great stadium, some people criticize it. I don't. I think it's nice to go into air conditioning in the middle of the summer.
Sure.
When you watch a game.
What about the fact that it's kind of across the other side of the bay? I mean, because that's been a topic of conversation too, right? Wouldn't we have, if you're the team and if you're a baseball fan, the thinking is, wouldn't it be better to be somewhere where you can kind of catch more people who aren't prepared to make that drive across the bay?
Well, there's a lot of people that go to the games. I mean, we obviously would like to have greater attendance. But this is a team that's hot right now. I mean, they got the best record in the American League. They have a shot to get into the playoffs, a good shot, I would say, and possibly go to the World Series again. I mean, who knows? We don't know. But that's what makes sports exciting. And it's exciting for me. I love to watch them on TV. I've gone to a couple games already this season. And I just think it's worth the effort to try and keep them.
813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562 to join the conversation if you've got questions for Governor Crist. He's running to be the next mayor of St. Petersburg. Questions about the Rays stadium deal, which we've just been chatting about, maybe some of that workforce housing in the gas plant neighborhood that people have been talking about as well, plans for that piece of property. What are your thoughts? 813-755-6562 is the number. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. So, let's talk about the gas plant. I mean, because that has been a point of contention, I guess, as well. I mean, it was kind of something that Mayor Ken Welch has been working towards to try and redevelop. What would your plans be for that patch of property?
Well, it's a big opportunity. It's about 86 acres. It's right next to downtown St. Petersburg, which is a unique, if not unique, opportunity for the city to put something there that can be memorable, that is good for the people of St. Petersburg. It can be mixed use. There's several different plans that have been put forward, some solicited and some not. And God bless people that are putting plans forward. One has been selected by the mayor, but it has to be adopted by the city council. And my understanding is a vote for that won't happen until next summer. So this election will be over, maybe for 6 months over when that vote comes to pass. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for some good things to happen in the interim. And I'm excited about it.
Many of the candidates for Mayor of St. Pete say the city's response to Hurricanes Milton and Helene illustrated what's wrong with how City Hall is currently run. Now, you just came out with an ad attacking Mayor Ken Welch on the subject. Here it is.
And City Hall was missing in action. Recovery funds got delayed. Piles of debris never collected. Construction permits unapproved. And neighborhoods left to fend for themselves.
So, I mean, Mayor Welch's take on that, he said the city had never faced a disaster of that magnitude or debris collection of that magnitude. He said he learned lessons from it. But if you're elected mayor, what would you do differently if you were faced with a disaster like that?
Everything. I mean, number one, you got to prepare. And I've got experience doing that on a statewide level, both while I was Attorney General and as your governor. And so I understand what it's like to be prepared before the storm comes. I mean, what's different about an earthquake versus a hurricane? At least you get a warning that it might be coming, and they do all the tracking of the storm and how it's going to, perform and move forward. So you use that preparation to be set for when the storm does hit. You hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, just to be prudent and smart. And it seems to me one of the things you can do so that you get debris taken care of after the storm passes is sign contracts with contractors who can do that before storms hit. So they're ready, the day after to start cleaning up very quickly. That did not happen in St. Pete because the administration was not prepared. And that's obvious to me because I've been in situations where I had to be prepared for the entire state being subject to being hit by storms. And, had to go through a lot of them as Attorney General when Jeb Bush was still governor. And he did a magnificent job of being prepared for those storms. So I had a great mentor, if you will, to watch, up close and personal during those storms. There were about 8 and 2 years that we had to deal with. Fortunately, no storms actually hit Florida while I was governor, but plenty came our way, and we had to be prepared. And we were prepared because the experience I had witnessing what Governor Bush had done was a great opportunity for me.
The city is kind of uniquely vulnerable, right? I mean, the whole sort of Tampa Bay, greater metropolis of, Tampa, St. Pete, because of the geography, if a storm comes up that bay, that can be terrible. So it does kind of put some extra pressure on the mayor of St. Petersburg, right?
All the more reason to be prepared instead of not being prepared. I mean, you put it very well. Obviously, that bay can fill up with water and does. When you have a heavy storm coming in, depending on the direction it's turning, and not be prepared or anticipate or even contemplate that might occur is irresponsible to me. And that comes from the voice of experience, mine. I've seen it as both Attorney General and Governor, how being prepared, having an emergency operations center that's functioning properly, not leaving it in the middle of a storm.
You're saying that it didn't, that emergency operations center didn't function as it should have?
No, I'm saying the mayor didn't function as he should have. He left it. He left it and went home. Now, I don't understand that. When you are the leader, you need to be there to lead. 90% of it is showing up. We all hear that growing up when it relates to your job or your employment. You got to show up. He only showed up in his first year. This is a report from the Tampa Bay Times, not me, 34% of the time. I don't know how you keep a job if you only show up 34% of the time. And I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he'll be retained.
Got a caller coming in from St. Pete. Renee, you're on the air. What are you thinking, Renee?
I was wondering when something was going to be done about the homeless population downtown St. Pete. We have homeless people defecating in the streets, going up to tourists and young people, asking for money, making comments. I mean, this has been going on for a long time. I can't even walk out of my building without being approached.
Renee, thanks for your call. What about that, Mayor?
I think she brings up a great point, and thank you for the call, Renee. I've witnessed it too. I see it. I think it's beyond unfortunate. It's a catastrophe. And I think a lot of it begins with mental health, to be candid. I think that, trying to address the problem before you get to that point where somebody's in that desperate a situation where they're homeless, to get them help prior to that occurring by getting them the proper health care, proper mental health care, if that's what's necessary, and try to be more of a preventative influence rather than having to deal with it after the fact. And I think that'd be best.
I mean, mental health may be part of it, but isn't it more just about the kind of basic economics of the fact that the cost of living is very, very high, and a lot of people, they may be working more than one job, sometimes 2 and 3, and
No
still
doubt.
Trying to find a home can be really challenging.
Absolutely. There's no question about it. I mean, look, we live in a beautiful place. Tampa Bay, and in my selfish point of view, St. Petersburg is just, it's a jewel of a place. And, to have those kinds of sad situations exist in St. Petersburg is terribly sad, terribly sad. And you have to have empathy for people who are dealing with difficult situations, whether it's mental health related, economically related, whatever it might be. And, I have a rule that I try to live by. It's called the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. In fact, it's the name of my little boat. It's that important to me. And this is one example where I think you need to do unto others as you would have done unto you. There's an old expression, but for the grace of God, there go I. And if you feel that way, then we need to act in a way that's compassionate and has empathy.
Now, I want to ask a question. I've got an email here too, but you've talked about cutting city property taxes to help residents save money. Opponents say this will force cuts to city services. We've got an email from Stephen who writes, cutting property tax sounds okay, but this is a source of revenue for the city. What are the specifics? If you make $200,000 and have a $1.5 million home, is $8,000 really too much to give to a city that could build more affordable housing, help its public schools, better build a hurricane infrastructure? City spending is not categorically a bad thing. It depends where the money is being spent. So what about that notion of cutting city property taxes?
I think it's a good idea. That's why I proposed it. I think people deserve and need relief. That we're talking about affordability like halfway through the show, and this is one way to reduce that burden on the taxpayer is to reduce that property tax. I proposed a 0.4 millage reduction. That would result in almost $15 million per year back to the taxpayers, still being able to have good fire protection, good police protection, and the necessary items that we have to have in our budget. It's just by being more efficient in how we do it. The current administration has umpteen people making over $200,000 a year. That sounds like a lot of fat to me. And so I think what we need to do is be more efficient on behalf of the taxpayers, spend their money wisely, and make sure that when we can make reductions that don't reduce services, give that money back to the taxpayers because it's their money.
Got about 30 seconds left here, Governor, but what is your pitch to the voters? What do you want to leave listeners with here?
If they want a mayor who cares about St. Petersburg, Charlie Crist cares. I've always cared about St. Petersburg, whether I was governor or a young state senator or a student at St. Pete High. It's a wonderful place. I'll work hard every single day, and we'll get St. Petersburg back on track where she belongs.
Actually, if you wouldn't mind, we've got a couple more callers coming in. So
I don't mind.
If you can stay on for another couple minutes, just answer a couple of calls, that would be great. We are talking with former Governor Charlie Crist. He's running to be the next mayor of St. Petersburg. 813-755-6562. You can also email FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. If you're on the line, do stay on the line. We'll get to your calls in just a moment when Florida Matters Live and Local continues. Stay with us.
I'm Indira Lakshmanan. For most of us, our senses are separate. We see with our eyes and we hear with our ears. For some people, one sense sparks another.
For instance, every day of the week has a color, a number, a shape. Sometimes things have a smell that I can think of, or a temperature, or a texture.
Understanding synesthesia, next time on Here and Now.
Join us this afternoon from 1 to 3 on WUSF 89.7.
Hi, I'm Megan Bowman, the engagement reporter for Your Florida. Whether on social, online, or on air, I get to talk to you. Your Florida answers your questions about how things in state government work and find out how new laws in Tallahassee will impact your neighborhoods and your communities. Because state government isn't just about politics, it's about you. Visit WUSF.org/YourFlorida.
Support for WUSF comes from listeners like you and from Seitenbacher with a new web shop, healthy muesli, cold-pressed oils, and vegetable broth mix delivered to your door from right here in Tampa Bay. Details at Seitenbacher.com, Seitenbacher. Seitenbacher.
You're listening to WUSF 89.7, your spot for local.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Matthew Petty. With us in the studio, former Governor Charlie Crist is running to be the next mayor of St. Petersburg. Got a couple of calls coming in. Tahid is calling in from St. Petersburg. Tahid, you're on the air. What is your question?
Yeah, my question, I know the governor told us where he stands on the property tax. My question is, I don't hear enough about what's going to actually replace that revenue if the property tax passes.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question, right? Briefly, if you could, Governor, what about that?
Well, I think what Tahid is talking about is this proposed amendment that may be on the ballot in November. We're not sure it's going to be there, though, Tahid, yet. I think there's 3 or 4 lawsuits already filed to keep it off the ballot because of the way the language was drafted by the legislature. So, number one, we don't know if it's going to be on the ballot. Number two, we don't know if it is on the ballot, if it's going to pass. Because for one of these amendments to be adopted, it has to get over 60% of the vote in order to be adopted. That's a high threshold to hit for anybody. So time will tell. But if it does pass, obviously there's going to be a hit to local governments. There are different estimates on what it might be, but I think it would be pretty significant and very difficult. And what that would mean is we have to really tighten our belt as local governments, do the very best that we can. As I said earlier, spend the people's money wisely and make sure that you're providing the services they need the most first. Like any family does, you need food, you need shelter. When you're a city, you need infrastructure. You need to make sure that the roads are good and people are safe and support the police and support our firefighters.
And we've got Meredith calling in from St. Petersburg. Meredith, you're on the air. Your thoughts briefly?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going back to another caller that, was speaking about the homelessness and things like that. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate Chris' response on that with looking to the root of the problem and getting to that and just the approach of compassion and, working towards that resolve. But that was my comment. I just really appreciated that, and that really secured my vote.
Well, thank you, Meredith. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your vote. And I get the feeling that we're wrapping up here, Matt. So I want to thank you and WUSF and 89.7 for having me today. It's been a joy, and I think very informative questions by some really good people who took the time to call in, and appreciate it. And I hope everybody gets out and votes. You can vote early. Not often, but early.
Right.
And, of course, Election Day is August the 18th. So I'd encourage everybody to get out and vote, and I'd appreciate your vote. Charlie Crist for mayor.
Former Governor Charlie Crist. We've been talking about his campaign to be the next mayor of St. Petersburg. Governor, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. It's been a pleasure.
Well, stay with us on Florida Matters Live and Local because we are going to be talking about true crime. It does take on a different meaning, though, in Pamela Koloff's new book, Catch the Devil. Tale of a notorious conman whose jailhouse testimony helped convict several people and send a man in Pinellas County to death row for a crime he didn't commit. Koloff's book details of interactions with and reporting on Paul Skelnick. He's the so-called jailhouse snitch and the repercussions of his actions years later. Catch the Devil book tour is tonight, coming to Tombolo Books in St. Petersburg. But Pamela joins us now in studio for a preview. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, if you want to call in too, you can. Maybe true crime is your guilty pleasure. Maybe you know a little bit about the case. Paul Skelnick. You can join the conversation by calling 813-755-6562 or emailing FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. So let's dive into the story, Pamela. When did you first hear about this person and the kind of cases that he was involved in?
Yeah, I got a tip in 2018 that Paul Skelnick had been not just a jailhouse informant in Pinellas County, but a really prolific jailhouse informant. And I had always been looking for a story that had a jailhouse snitch in it because it's always a red flag that something's wrong with the case. It means prosecutors don't have enough. Doesn't necessarily indicate innocence, just means there's a problem. And so I set down on the path of finding out who this person was who has sent upwards of 40 people, helped send upwards of 40 people to prison from Pinellas County.
And so one of the main characters, or one of the main people who sort of, I guess, is the gist of the book, you focus on the Jim Daly case, right? So he's still on death row today. Tell us about him and why this is such an important kind of part of this, I guess, panoply of lies that were spun by this character.
So much of the action of the book takes place in the 1980s and 1990s. And so We can think that this is distant history, but there are men sitting in Florida prisons today because of the word of Paul Skalnick. One of them is a man named Jim Daly. When I talked about snitches being a red flag, he had 3 jailhouse informants in his trial, which tells you something prosecutors did not have enough. This is someone who was implicated in a 1985 murder of a 14-year-old girl named Shelley Boggio. He was implicated by the prime suspect in that case, Jack Piercy, who has since signed affidavits that he's then rescinded that he was the person who did this. When we look at Jim Daly's case, this is someone where there was no physical evidence, no forensic evidence, no motive, no nothing, just the word of the person who had likely committed this crime. And so when you had Skalnick come into the courtroom and on the stand and tell these stories that were so persuasive, that was enormously helpful to jurors.
I mean, it's interesting because the more, every chapter goes on, there's a new kind of, I guess, revelation about what Skalnick was up to. And it's kind of mind-boggling because, partly because of the way you tell it. It's like it's very fast-paced, but you're discussing something that's kind of unfolding over years. But every time you think, how is this happening? How is this person able to get away with it and basically dupe, prosecutors and people in law enforcement?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, he had a get-out-of-jail-free card, which was
literally
whenever he would commit a crime and get caught, and he committed many, many, many crimes, and they escalated in their severity over the years. What he would do is he would look around the jail where he was. People who are in jail are pre-trial. They're awaiting trial. He would figure out who was most valuable to prosecutors and police, and he would then claim that, whoever the most valuable person was had confessed to him. And he would then tell an elaborate story on the stand that wove together details that he got from newspaper clippings and court filings that sounded persuasive. And then he would throw in these very incendiary details that helped prosecutors not just get convictions, but extremely punishing sentences.
Mm-hmm. And so he was kind of like, the more you learn about him and the more we learn about him in reading this book, I mean, he has these cons that he perpetrates on people. He's able to dupe a lot of folks, including like a series of people that he married, right? So sort of tell us more about how that unfolded.
Yes. So I found that he married 9 different women, some of them at the same time. He was a bigamist. I believe there were more. And he had a gift for figuring out what it was that people longed for or needed. I begin the book by talking about going to see him in federal prison, and he sensed in me that I longed to have access to him, and he strung me along for a couple months. And I begin the story that way of sort of how I got duped.
Yeah, in fact, I wonder if you could just read a passage, and this is from, I think, let me look here, it's page 5, so this is kind of towards the end of the prologue, and you've secured like an agreement from Paul Skalnick that he's going to talk to you, so you're quite excited. You're like, as a reporter, like, this is a great story, and here's a key source. So just kind of read from that passage.
I'm thrilled. Yes, I'll read from this. Elated that he had agreed to cooperate, I drove home to Austin, where I pored over jail logs, case files, and trial transcripts, and wrote him letters that brimmed with questions. I contacted the prison to set up another interview and messaged him through an email system that connects federal inmates to the outside world. He wrote often, describing the daily indignities of prison life and his fear of dying alone, but never a word about Pinellas County. There was always a holdup. He had not received my most recent letter because the mailroom was short-staffed, or he felt too unwell to write. Still, he assured me that as soon as he regained his strength, he would be ready to talk. I refused to admit to myself until it was much too late that Skalnick had been stringing me along. Months after our visit, when I was still holding out hope that he might talk, he wrote to say that my questions were making him uneasy. Then he went dark on me.
So you sort of witnessed, I think, a little bit of what, like, the power he was able to wield over people in his orbit, whether they were, prosecutors that he could convince that he had a genuine confession out of somebody else in jail, or, his spouses and as you point out, some of them he was kind of married to consecutively, or business partners.
Yes, I put this in the book because, I'm an investigative reporter. I knew I was going to visit a con man with a rap sheet, 10 pages long. And still, when he told me about his 100-foot yacht in Belize, I didn't believe that. But I did believe that he was going to talk. And his 9th wife told me that he always wove a little bit of truth into every lie, and that's how he got people to believe him. And I saw that myself. And then I documented, this sort of set me on the journey of trying to figure out what had happened here, going all the way back to the 70s, of how he did this with investigators and prosecutors as well.
Mm-hmm. We've got about 30 seconds left here, but Jim Daly, so he's still in prison. What are his prospects? What does the future look like for him?
We would need some kind of political action at this point, but I'll just say quickly that I think what I hope people take from the book is Skelnick is not the villain of the story. The villain of the story is a system that incentivizes someone like Paul Skelnick and leaves someone like Jim Daly on death row.
Been speaking with acclaimed writer Pamela Koloff on her new book, Catch the Devil. Her book tour begins, it's tonight in Tombola Books in St. Petersburg. Pamela, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that is our show for today. Next time on Florida Matters Live and Local, school supplies are getting more expensive. Teachers are footing the bill. We're going to talk about the rising costs of school supplies. You can tune in Tuesday at noon. Our executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Producers Amelie Horace and Quincy Walters. Our intern is Claire Macurola. Our engineers Jackson Harp and Geo Garvin. Jackson composed our theme music, and Warren Buckholz handled the video today. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Watch on WSF's YouTube channel. I'm Matthew Petty. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow.